Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Road to Better Plant Design, Episode 2, presented by David Wolf. I'm going to keep this intro short and sweet today. So make sure you go to our calendar at asti.com/calendar to see our full list of upcoming webinars. We do have episode 3 of this series coming up in October, so make sure you are signed up for that. All right. Now I'm very pleased to introduce David Wolf. He's a director of services at Applied Software with years of experience in the industry. All right, take it away, David. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Let's see my screen set up and we should be go.
You're good to go.
All right, thank you. So we are on the road to better plant design. I have Owen Whitehouse with me, so we will be chatting as we talk about this process. Like Caitlin mentioned, we have done episode 1 where we talked about how you define business outcomes, and part of that is looking at metrics and deciding how you want to measure your success. And then episode 2 today will be about how you choose to evaluate different tools, along with deciding on implementation options. And in episode 3, we're looking to put together some customer stories around other companies that have chosen to use Plant 3D and what their journey has been like to connect their vision with what they wanted to do with the reality of what plant design is ending up like for them. So that's where we're going as far as the episodes. Today, we're going to be diving into reintroducing the team. It's been a month since we've done this, so we're going to review the team members that are in our story. And then we're going to jump into looking at the tools and how you use tools to evaluate the effect on the outcomes that you selected. The next step is going to be talking around implementation strategy. So we need to make sure that our implementation, we're thinking the right things about our approach and understanding the trade-offs between the cost and schedule, and make sure that we're basing that in data around how those implementations can be successful. And then we'll also gain perspective by pointing on to the next steps, which will be hearing from people moving forwards. So to review our personnel in our company that we're talking about, Julie Sanders is the engineering manager. And so she's one of the drivers of innovation at her company. And on her team, she also worked with Paul Miller, who is the piping lead. And Paul's goal is much like most of us from the piping background. We're looking at the project, making sure that all of the disciplines can fit and work together, evaluating the scope for the client against what we can deliver, and make sure that the work is in process. And so he does enjoy looking at data. We also have Dylan Bolt. So Dylan will be the project manager, so he's going to be more responsible on the construction side, and maybe managing the deliverable timeline, selecting trades, and making sure that we have the right personnel to build the design package selected. And the company we're talking about is Acme Process Fluids. So their overall goal is to make sure that their processes are taking advantage of the best technologies, whether you're referring to chemical processes or design and build processes or maintenance. And so that is the little case study that we're walking through today. So first, let's jump into the tools. So this is going to be a rough outline of 6 different tools that we've identified that you need to be using as you evaluate the best way to hit your business objectives. So first, we're looking at feature comparison. And I have a little blip up on my screen for some reason. All right, that was Microsoft throwing up a warning. So feature comparison, we're going to use feature comparison when we want to identify, define, and weight benefits from similar products. So first of all, you need to go through and build your feature list, and then we're going to identify what features are similar between different products. For example, at Acme Process Fluids, the BOM reporting feature, which ended up being one of the big outcomes they needed to address is going to be high on the feature list because it has such a big impact on making sure that they get the right materials purchased, making sure that it's happening in a timely manner so they can get it can affect the lead time. And so your reporting ends up being on the feature list as one of the critical things to compare between products. And so you also want to weight it so that at the end of the day, you have a fairly unbiased opinion. And you also would want to take several sources into account because different people are going to weight things differently. And so you might have an interview process behind this. Oh, and you've done some of this in the background. What was that like in the past? What was that like for your interview process and identifying what features to compare?
Well, you have to, like you mentioned earlier on, this is based on business objectives. So there's two sets of data that I often run into. First of all, it's the management team who's looking for some specific result they're looking to improve on, and then the other one is just specific knowledge from the subject matter experts. So the team members themselves who actually have used different platforms. So you basically, you interview the teams, you try to, balance everyone's needs and wants and wishes around the tool sets. And it's very conversational, and it's also very focused on, trying to deliver a value. So the software, I mean, there's a lot of different softwares to do this stuff, right? So you can see from the list there, there's a bunch of tools. So how do you pick? Well, it's a matter of trying to build something empirical. So that's I guess what this really comes back to is trying to take some of the subjectivity out of it and give everyone a fair shot.
Exactly. And so the tools that we're talking about right now aren't necessarily specific to Plant 3D. They're more business analysis, I guess, in the terms of just taking an approach that is repeatable and sustainable and less opinionated, right? Because again, we're trying to go back to data, and so these all provide different insights into aspects of data that will affect your implementation.
Yeah, I mean, these are all subjectively judged, but once you have, equivalent criteria to judge everything by, I think the process becomes a little bit easier.
Sure. The next tool that we like to use and identify in our implementation process is the gap analysis. And so this is not necessarily looking at specific products, although it can apply to specific products. But you also, in addition to the product gaps that you might have, what you really want to compare them to is the business outcomes that you're looking at. And so, it's fine to find a gap within a product, but if in the end you're still missing your business outcomes, then because you didn't identify where those gaps were with the product, you're still going to miss. And so the gap analysis just has a role, again, of saying, maybe there's some content, maybe a company does a specific set of work around material type, let's say resistor-flex, and maybe that's not in the out-of-the-box content. Well, needing to identify how you're going to get that, if that's a major portion of your project, you need to identify that up front so you know how much time to build into either purchase or create that type of content. In our scenario for Acme process fluids, one of the things that they're using to affect the business outcome around collaboration is the RFI count. And so since Plant 3D itself doesn't have any tools for managing an RFI process, that would be one of the items identified in a gap analysis. Now, there are maybe other tools. For example, if you look at the Autodesk portfolio, there are other capabilities around the gap analysis around RFIs, but you want to make sure to identify what product is going to fill that gap. Next, we have performance comparison. And so the performance comparison is really kind of a deep dive into a feature. And so when this tool would be used, you want to identify like the critical path that users are going to take on a daily basis. And so, for example, you don't want any surprises when it comes down to how you're drawing your P&IDs or how you're modeling around, is it usable, or what hiccups are the users going to run into. And so a performance comparison would be done between two different products but you define a workflow that you need to perform in both products. And so when you do this, it gives you a much more data-driven way to say, all right, we were able to take, 3 users of the same skill set, roughly the same skill set, throw them through these workflows, and we found out there was this much difference between product A and product B. So for example, we have a study here that Autodesk commissioned for comparing basic AutoCAD to Plant 3D, and it shows a big productivity increase when you're using AutoCAD PNID. And so that's just due to the data-driven aspect, due to the symbol styles being defined. But those are the types of performance comparisons that really you want to cover on things that are going to affect your day-to-day business, because any sort of slowdown there or difference gets magnified just because of the amount of time that that action gets replicated throughout the course of a year. So these are, it's a little more annoying and it's a little more in depth, but it definitely is worth the effort to really define the outlook for your users. And some of this you can kind of get just through training. Maybe if you're not going to do a formal performance comparison, taking a short little training class and evaluating how the product felt by your users is a good way to get a gauge without investing in a detailed performance comparison. And so in our scenario with our case study, Acme Process Fluid reviewed the study. They saw the productivity gain of using Plant 3D versus AutoCAD, and that was good enough for their basis to take on. And there's a detailed report on this, and we can provide that asset later on of what the case study is, and it's walking through and creating a PNID from scratch. And so it's a good look at what kind of gains you can see. We're going to talk about the ecosystem a little bit. I was looking for a good graphic for this, but long story short, Plant has so much stuff connecting to it, and it's really hard to fit it all on one page. So, in an ecosystem for Plant 3D or for piping products, you're going to see things like an ERP system, materials. You're going to see viewing products like Navisworks. You're going to see things like structural groups, electrical groups, other mechanical for HVAC or plumbing. You're going to see the building itself. You're going to see process analysis. So there is a wide variety of products and things that can integrate with Plant. And the reason you're looking at this is because after you've done like the main out of the box gains for your business outcomes, you're going to want to start to look down the road a little bit. And so when you do that, you're going to be identifying, all right, where can this information from our design impact the rest of our business? And so that's where the ecosystem comes in. And so having an idea of the products and workflows that are possible ahead of time, make sure that the 3 and 5 year plans are not jeopardized by your software selection. And so you can do this for a variety of things, whether it's your instrumentation, whether it's your electrical package. This is, again, just specific to Plant 3D. It covers all your products that you're using. So building this out will help you make sure that your long-term picture, long-term path has room to grow for your users. And so in our case study, Acme Process Fluids identified the ERP system as something they'd like to integrate down the road with the Plant 3D catalog. So the benefit that they're looking to get is later on, once their catalogs are integrated, they would like to be able to say, generate a bill of material that has all the part numbers filled out. And what that does is that takes a lot of the mystery out of the quoting process. And then that gives them, on the back end, the materials team, the ability to switch out different parts based on substitution through their like JD Edwards system or something like that. And so that's a big benefit, but it is definitely, you want to make sure you have the product configured and all your standard workflows done before you tackle something of that magnitude. Owen, have you seen people integrating their catalogs, or what else have you seen as far as the ecosystem that affects the Plant 3D picture or the design picture?
Oh gosh, it's everything under the sun. I mean, I guess the big takeaway here is using a tool like Plant 3D actually is your entry into this conversation around ecosystems. So without intelligent PNIDs to start the process off, it's very difficult to to make this connect to your better plant design. So that's really the first part of it. And then from there on out, everything's kind of just only limited by your imagination. So do you want to use your pie trend data in conjunction with your P&IDs? Do you want to connect your catalogs to your procurement system? It's all open now because these are open, easy to access databases, but you first have to use the tool and you first have to set the tools up correctly. So that's where, having some expertise like Applied can bring to the table is helpful. But then, just sit down and think about, what are the potentials? Where could you make a connection that would actually improve a process that's probably already happening in your organization, but it's completely manual right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reminds me, and it's not just, this isn't something that's static, right? Even as time goes on, new products and tools come out. For example, we're evaluating the DXP standard very heavily here, and we're pretty excited about that. We're also looking at the tool from Microsoft, Power BI, which it's been around for a while, but it's recently the way that they've changed the licensing and packaging has made it a lot easier to access for people. And so we're just thrilled with the power that we're discovering in Power BI. Oh, that's a pun there, wasn't it? Not really a pun. But we're just thrilled with the opportunity that Power BI creates for us to do things like comparing the status between P&ID objects and model objects. Owen's digging deep into identifying spec content in the model and whether it's consistent with your pipe specs or whether things got orphaned. There's just so much potential, and this ecosystem is something that we keep an eye on pretty heavily as we R&D new tools and new technology that comes out.
Yeah, and some companies have very stringent requirements around this. Like if you're working with or for a larger organization that's using something like SAP, they've got standards written up about how you're going to work with your components and make sure they have part numbers on them and provide the correct bills of material. So those ecosystem questions are extremely important. And again, none of this happens in a seamless and interconnected way without first starting with an intelligent design tool like Plant 3D.
Yeah. Great. Next, the next tool or concept to keep in mind as part of the evaluation process is extensibility. And very similar to the ecosystem, this really is making sure that the long range plan isn't jeopardized by your tool, by the product of your choice. And so after you've done the setting up your standard workflows and potentially as part of the ecosystem, you might need to create some custom tools or custom internal products to smooth the way for some of your vision. Like maybe it's some of the ecosystem, maybe it's moving data around, maybe it's merging data, maybe it's uploading stuff different places. And really you want to make sure the product that you choose has a strong API that's easily accessible, and that it can just build from what is available out of the box. And so definitely you're looking for things like that is .NET. That is probably the biggest thing to factor in, that it uses an open language or popular language like Python, or that there's other frameworks in place that it uses. Also look at tooling. So as part of extensibility, one of our big things that we love here at Applied Software is DevExpress. I'm a massive fan of the DevExpress tool set. You can drop them on to a project, hook it up to data source very easily, and get so much mileage out of the box tools like the data grid or the report creator. And incidentally, that is what the report creator in Plant 3D is built in, is using the DevExpress tool set, as well as like the data manager. And those are examples of them, but there's a lot more it can do. And so all of that is part of the extensibility picture, is being able to define and create competitive advantage for your company that you might not want released out into the wild or have someone else develop for you as part of a different product. And so once you kind of fine tune your vision and then you justify the investment, then that's where the extensibility comes in to make sure that you can execute that vision for the long-term plan. And we need to keep moving. So the last part or last piece that you want to make sure you have in place is support. So key example, it is really hard sometimes to get questions answered. Like when it's Friday afternoon, you have a deadline, maybe your plotter stops working, you're printing. I know I first ran into this working for a company that had a plotter that was from the 60s, and just so much headache in trying to get the drawing package out, and because it wasn't plotting to scale, and come to find out for whatever reason, it scaled drawings down by 0.98 for who knows why. And so that's something, I was going through all the AutoCAD settings, but those are issues that really do come up in a real world scenario. And you can't predict those. And so it's very important when you're selecting products to select products that have a strong community around them. And so you'll see this often like in product forums or on social media like Reddit. If there's a Reddit group, then being able to pop in there and ask questions of people who use this in anger, as Owen likes to say, use the product in anger, and make sure that they can jump in and give you practical answers to problems that you wouldn't find necessarily in help documentation. Also, as part of that, not just the community aspect, but also having a partner reseller. So they can provide SLA agreements so that when you do have a support ticket, within 2 to 4 hours or whatever your agreement is, you can get an answer and have someone work on your problem. And sometimes the problems that the resellers are attacking aren't necessarily just how-to questions. Sometimes you need them to attack troubleshooting questions like, I configured this, but I know I've messed up somewhere, but I'm not sure where. So how do we rescue this? Those are types of questions that we answer and help people out with. And so having the support part as part of your overall plan for evaluating the tool that you're looking at is an important piece. All right, so let's keep jumping on down, and we will have some time for Q&A at the end of this. We're going to jump into implementation strategy. So first of all, this is one of those implementation strategy it's very fluid, right? Because you have, if you're a salesperson, you're going to say, we can do anything, right? And so sometimes that doesn't help too much because you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? And so we've tried to categorize and create 3 categories of implementations to help you kind of get your mind around what are the options and what can this look like. And so first of all is doing it yourself. So obviously the key advantage of DIY is it's a lower upfront cost. You're not paying out of pocket as much. And the risk is your timeline. And we'll get into this a little bit deeper, but that's kind of the first area that we've identified. The second is what we're going to call like a guided approach. So this does get you some basic training in person dedicated to your company where you can ask some questions. I say 2-3 weeks for a time frame. So that's not necessarily like 3 calendar weeks. Our approach that we like to have is we like to do the basic user training first, give you some time to consume that and maybe use it a little bit, and then have the admin training scheduled at a later date. So it might be, we do the basic training 1 week, leave a gap of a week, and then do the admin training a week later. It could be 2 weeks later, whatever, however it fits. We've also done them back to back, but we just see people tend to have a lot better questions and a lot more focused questions if they have a little bit of time hands on the product. And so that's why we like to put a little bit of a gap in there. And so I did put implementation spans multiple years. This is talking about, this all depends on your vision as well. And that's one of the sliders that's really hard to delineate. But what does your standard implementation look like? And then what does the end look like where you've implemented maybe like your ERP system? And so there's a wide variety of where all this stuff falls. But it is a process, right? The goal is to get to where you're doing continual improvement in a practical way that keeps demonstrating business value over time. And the third one is what we're going to call a managed implementation. And so this is where it's going to be higher cost. But you can have the option of configuring and custom everything. But the benefit is you're going to be up to speed faster. And so the full implementation is going to look longer, but that just means that maybe we're working on this for 2 or 3 months ahead of your team seeing the work, so that your actual team timeout is a lot shorter, but the overall implementation is going to take longer. So that means we're doing the configuration in a focused manner. We're identifying the things. We have a couple power users that we're working with and consulting, and they're saying, well, we need to do it like this, or we need to do it like this. And so there's a lot of feedback, a lot of back and forth. It's very collaborative. But that, with the goal being that when your first project goes live, your users have just gone through the basic user training course. So that's fresh in their minds. They've seen some videos around workflows that they're going to be doing that's different. And then they'll be able to jump into that project. And sometimes we like doing pilot projects. And so that's like a 4-hour or 1-day mini training course where we do a very focused drive-through, modeling equipment, getting structural stuff in place, routing some pipe, drawing some P&IDs, and running some ISOs. And giving them that focused hands-on time, again, helps them when they get to the actual project, to where it's, there's less workflow questions and more just getting the work done, making them more productive. And so the timelines here are around the whole implementation process, not just the training portion. But as we dig in deeper, we're going to look through and see kind of what this looks like. So we've created this term called time to productive. And that's just saying your team, how long does it take them to start the product the first time to when they're getting a project out and they're not losing time, or the time is not substantially different from when their previous workflow. And so that's kind of the range that we're measuring here. Also, these packages, as you kind of move these sliders around between cost and time frame, you're going to be changing what that looks like. And so the higher cost is going to mean you can have a shorter time to productivity. And then the lower cost obviously is going to be, you're going to be a longer time to productivity. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of a ballpark around the cost. The do-it-yourself method, we go through a lot of arguments, and I might get in trouble for this, but I feel like it's helpful to have a ROM at least. So don't take this as a quote by any means. But if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to look at roughly spending maybe $0. We do have some training available for our clients through online self-paced modules. So the training portion can be done via video learning. But maybe you'd like a roadmap workshop. So that runs about $1,000, and that gives you kind of a roadmap to follow on your own. So it's going to be very minimal, and $0 to $1,000, just depending on the spend that you would like to incur. Also, depending on the support that you want, if you're going to go through and just use the forums for support, or whether you want to have a service level agreement with Applied Software to where you're getting your support questions taken care of, and maybe some mentoring. But it's a fairly low cost. For the guided, if you're looking for a ROM for the guided, budgeting somewhere between the $6,000 to $10,000 is going to mean you get some training, user and admin, and then you have a little bit of a bucket of money to spend on just the random questions that you can't figure out. And so all of these also hinge on you having what kind of personnel you have in place. So people who set up similar products before are going to need much less help from us. If this is a new thing or it's a new transition, then definitely having more time to spend with us and just run questions by. Generally, we do see people who have experience in this type of area, once they go through the basic user training, they may need 2 hours for the first 6 weeks, 2 hours a week for the first 6 weeks as they get into a live project. So it doesn't have to be a lot of hands-on or a lot of time and money spent. And we can definitely accommodate that. But again, that just means that you're creating more of this content on your own. You're managing the discovery process internally, and it's taking time away from your billable work. And so that's where the managed comes in, because yes, it does have a higher cost. Generally per product, we kind of just rough order magnitude, thumb in the air type of budget, thumb in the wind type of budget. You're going to look around 25 to 30K to budget for that. So what that would get you is we're looking at creating a project template for you, maybe 5 pipe specs, running through and creating some custom catalog content, configuring some ISOs that gets your user training, that gets a bucket of hours, maybe 10 to 20 or 30 buckets of hours for you guys to do Q&A sessions. So there's a lot of configuration work that goes into there. along with the discovery process for all of those. And so that's just kind of giving you some ballpark numbers to look at. Again, these are categories we've come up just to kind of help communicate the concept and how these are approached. And so you could go from $0 all the way to $100,000 or $200,000, just depending on how much, product or project backlog you have and how much the configuration work is going to pull away from your profit margin. And so that's kind of some perspective on those types of approaches. And now we do have time for a Q&A. It is 11:30, so we've been doing this for 30 minutes. Andre has asked if we have any video references. Andre, we're going to be doing some references around the product and implementations of Plant 3D next. If you're looking for demos, we do have a Getting Started with Plant 3D playlist that we can send you. Just please clarify whether you're looking for customer references or for product demos, and we can get you that information. Does anybody have any other questions that they'd like to ask either? And we can unmute you, or you can ask it in the chat or the Q&A. Integration of SAP. Okay, you're looking for integration. Yeah, we can try and dig that up. So we'll put that on a list and get back to you. Andre, thank you. Any other questions? How did you, I guess I'd like to get some opinions on the tools. Have you seen previously? I'm going to jump back in the slides a little bit. Are these ideas for evaluating the tools? There we go. Are these new ideas? Have you guys thought about these before? Have you used, like a feature comparison or doing a little performance comparison? Has anyone used these before? Feel free to raise your hand or message us if you'd like to speak up. Or I might start calling on people. Owen, is there someone we should call on?
Not it.
There we go. And that is perfectly fine. Well, if there are no questions, we will be posting this. Oh, I don't want to steal Caitlin's thunder. So let me just jump to, we'll do a quick review. So we reviewed today evaluating the tools, and here are 6 things to consider as part of your evaluation process. And then we also talked about implementation strategies. And so balancing your cost and the time frame that you want to be productive in is going to help you identify kind of the budget requests that you're asking for. And those are the big cornerstones of improving your road to plant design. And so we are also going to be having some more collateral come out around furthering the story of Acme Process Fluids and identifying the business outcomes that they're targeting, like around shorter schedules, lowering the cost of rework. And so we're looking forward to posting those and getting you guys some more information around this case study. Last call for questions. And if there's no one jumping out, then we are going to go ahead and turn this over to Caitlin.
It looks like we did have one more question if you'd like me to read it out.
Sure. That's a little bit off topic. Someone asked, can you discuss thoughts on an environment where you run P3D in a virtual machine versus Autodesk Construction Cloud? Why don't we take that one offline and we can make that a call or give you a call and have a chat about that one, since that's a little off topic. But thank you for asking that.
Perfect. All right. Well, you guys ready to wrap it up?
I think so.
Perfect. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for attending. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we trust that it was meaningful and impactful for you and your business. We look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Again, if you have any other questions, maybe that you couldn't think of right now, feel free to contact us here at Applied Software. We'd be happy to take those questions for you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.